Okay, then go ahead.
Hello all. Welcome the 18th program of Intersociety weekly webinar series. This is organized in collaboration with 7 organizations, and it has been going on successfully from April onwards in the online mode. So without any break, we have successfully moved on from the face-to-face mode to the online mode, and that's great. We have been having a series of talks on various topics, actively participated by all the organizations, the IEEE, IEI, Internet Society, Computer Society, Project Management Institute, Vakkom Moulavi Foundation, and IEEE, Engineering in Medicine and Biosociety. So today we are having another great speaker, Dr. B. Arun Nair, the consultant psychiatrist, and he'll be giving us a talk on brain and health. Just one request to all the participants, kindly all be on mute and please put in your questions on the chat box, which will be answered at the end of the session. Thank you. Passing on to hello. Passing on to the welcome speech by Mr. Korat Verghese.
A very good evening all. Let us first of all say thanks to God Almighty for keeping us healthy and alive. Many of people like us are suffering because of the COVID and due to this flood because of the heavy rain. And also we must be grateful to the technology advancement, so that even if we are away, even if we are at home or wherever we are, we could do this webinar very easily, and we can listen to technical talks and everything. See, I am entrusted the responsibility of welcoming you all, and I am happy to do the same. And today's talk, as our moderator has already mentioned, it is by Dr. B. Arun Nair, consultant psychiatrist. We know him already, but today he is going to give us a lecture on brain and health. And let us enjoy the talk. First of all, I welcome Dr. B. Arun Nair to this program.
Thank you, sir.
And for this program, it's organized by a group of professional bodies, and a group of people are working behind that. I welcome all of them to this program. And mainly, we are arranging this program for our community of technical people, of professional people, and all others who are listening to this one. Without our participants, every activity will be of no use. So I welcome all the participants to join this one and enjoy the meeting. And I thank you all. Let us listen to the program.
Right.
I can start now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can start.
Good evening and good morning, friends from Washington to Kuala Lumpur, depending on where you are. It's my proud privilege to introduce today's speaker. Last week, we had an eminent neurosurgeon, Professor Bhaskar Rao from NIMHANS, Bangalore, talking to us on brain health. Today, we have a distinguished psychiatrist from Trivandrum Medical College talking to us on brain and behavior. You may all know the brainy mathematician Shakuntala Devi, who could solve the 23rd root of a pretty large number faster than a supercomputer. She said, human brain is a thick jungle. We never try to walk inside, only walk through the peripheries. That's enough for the routine things, but it can do amazing things if you really explore the capability of the brain. The brain gets messages from different parts of the body through different neurons, and thereafter informs the body has to respond to a particular situation or stimulus. The brain is also responsible for vital emotions such as anger, happiness, grief, shock, and the like. These interpretations give shape to the kind of behavior we exhibit. Dr. Arun Nair will tell us how to train our brain to behave well and develop positivity in this pandemic situation. Dr. Arun Nair is familiar to Malayalis who watch TV channels and read articles in newspapers and magazines. He has conducted over 1,000 episodes on health and social awareness in the TV channels and thousands of articles in the magazines. He handled a section on health, mental health in Health Encyclopedia, and also life skill education module Ullasa Paravagal for SCRT. He's a gifted trainer who has trained people in different elite institutions. And he is also winner of many, many awards. It is very hard to list all these awards in this short introduction. Around 280 persons have registered to attend this event, which shows the success of the program and also the interest in the popularity of this program and the topics. With these few words, I invite Dr. Arun to make his presentations to the August participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those kind introductory words. My sincere gratitude to the organizers, the 7 different professional organizations which are conducting this program, and those who have given me this great opportunity to address this August audience from various parts of the globe. In fact, it's a proud privilege to address you belonging to various age groups from various parts of the globe, engaged in various kinds of professions essentially related to engineering. So what is the relationship between brain and behavior? Or what is the seat of human behavior rather? Behavior of human beings, or mind within inverted commas, is something which has been puzzling human beings since ages, since centuries. There was absolute confusion regarding what is the seat of mind. Where is this mind located? Is it inside the body or is it outside? Is it influenced by the chemicals or the functioning of the body, or is it influenced by something which happened in the previous life? Lot of confusions, lot of deliberations without a clear consensus regarding what is it has been happening over the ages. So in fact, some idea regarding what is mind, what is the seat of mind, and what is that which controls behavior fairly became evident in the early part of the 20th century. Probably in 19th century, during a large period of time, it is interpreted that behavioral problems are the result of witchcraft, the result of supernatural powers, forces beyond our control, and supernatural or magico-religious kind of healing was something which was done for behavioral problems during that period of time. Later, Sigmund Freud from Austria, he was a trained neuroscientist who later introduced the concept of psychoanalysis, what is popularly known right now. And he was probably the first researcher who paved the way to identify how thought processes affect behavior. So he has his own theories. Some of the theories still hold good. Some have become obsolete. A lot of controversies still exist. But still, the seat of what is human mind was not unraveled even by Freud or the neo-Freudians, as you call them, the list of people who came after Freud. So the relationship between mind and brain became evident to human beings as a result of an accident which happened in the United States of America. So probably more than a century back, in United States of America, a railway track was being constructed and a group of laborers were toiling to make that happen. So huge rocks were there. The rocks had to be crushed using certain instruments. And after that, the pathways for laying down the railway track to be constructed. That was the way in which things went. So among the laborers who were engaged in that activity, there was a particular gentleman called Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage was a gem of a person according to his friends and co-workers because he was the most empathetic, most gentle human being which they had met ever in their life. So helpful to others. Every moment any of the co-workers need any help, Phineas Gage would go out of the way to help them. He was extremely well behaved towards women, very caring towards children, extremely soft-spoken, gentlest of the gentlemen, without any kind of addictions, any kind of behavioral problems. So he was the darling of the co-workers, obviously. So one afternoon, when this group of laborers were moving near to a huge rock, there was a crowbar, which is an instrument which is used for crushing the rocks. And a gentleman who was walking in the front was carrying this crowbar over his shoulder. This crowbar accidentally touched the rocks on the side. Some sparks fly from there. The rocks really, literally, they broke open and there was an explosion. And to escape from that explosion, everybody tried to jump. Phineas Gage also attempted to jump. So what happened as a result of this process is that this crowbar went and fell on the floor with its sharp end upwards. And unfortunately, when Phineas Gage jumped to escape from the explosion, he just fell on top of the crowbar with the sharp end of the crowbar piercing the front of his skull and coming out from the other side. Phineas Gage was taken to a hospital. In those days, sophisticated neurosurgical techniques were not available. So with whatever facilities were available, a doctor present there treated. He just pulled out the crowbar from his skull, repaired the skull with whichever medicines were available, applied some topical applications. Phineas Gage suffered some difficulty in walking and speaking. He was sent home after the treatment. He recuperated at his home over a period of a couple of months. And after that, he came back to work. The moment he was capable of walking, he was capable of working, Phineas Gage came back to work. But the Phineas Gage who had returned to work was totally different from the Phineas Gage who had left work a couple of months back. His behavior had altered beyond recognition. Phineas Gage, who used to be an extreme gentleman, presented as an extremely irritable person after he had returned from the accident. He demonstrated noise intolerance. The moment he heard loud noises, he would just close his ears and would shout aloud. If somebody called his name aloud, he would abuse them back. He started singing obscene songs in front of ladies and started showing vulgar gestures in front of them. He even started abusing small children. One day he had a small fight with a co-worker, which turned really bad. And he became too angry that he assaulted his co-worker like anything. And the other people had to intervene to rescue the co-worker from the clutches of Phineas Gage. And what shocked his co-workers was that one afternoon, the person who was working alongside Phineas Gage collapsed on the floor unconscious. Usually in these circumstances, Phineas Gage would be the first person to go and take this person to the hospital. But unfortunately, on this occasion, Phineas Gage was behaving as if he was completely oblivious of the unconscious person around him. People came, they took him to the hospital, and one of his co-workers asked Phineas Gage, "Why don't you bother about this person? He's a friend of yours, he's a co-worker of yours for several years. He's collapsed. Why don't you bother about him?" And Phineas Gage replied, "Somebody has fallen down. Why should I care? He's not my relative. is not my loved one. Why should I bother about him? It's his headache. I'm not bothered about such things. So that was the apathetic attitude which Phineas Gage developed. Phineas Gage's brain was subjected to examination. X-ray was available at that point of time, and X-ray was taken, and it was identified that certain tissues in the front part of the brain were damaged following the accident. So there is this part of the brain which is located just behind our forehead, which is referred to as the prefrontal cortex. Essentially, prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain which distinguishes a human being from an animal. If you have visited the zoo in Trivandrum, you might have observed the behavior of the lion in the zoo. The lion, the king of the forest, is asleep for most of the time in his cage. Once he wakes up, he starts eating the food material which is provided to him. And after his appetite is suppressed, then he would have sex with its female partner. Obviously, the people who have visited the cage would be catching the videos of the sex of the lion in their mobile phones or other digital equipments. But lion is continuing, not bothered about that act. I'm sure no human being would be doing such an act unless he is specifically paid for doing such a thing. So why does this happen? Why this difference in behavior between a lion and a human being? Animals like lion act on the spur of the moment based on their emotions. They are incapable of controlling their emotions. They act upon their emotions. They satisfy their emotions then and there. But human beings have got this capacity to control their emotions and to postpone the gratification of emotions according to their requirement. So this ability of controlling oneself, this ability of self-control is determined by this part of the brain which is located just behind the forehead, the prefrontal cortex. This prefrontal cortex, the most evolved part of the human brain, the most advanced part of the human brain, this behavioral problem was a big question. And it was identified that most of the behavioral problems are the result of various problems affecting the brain. Structural damage to brain, like tumor, like injury, like blood flow abnormalities, produce behavioral changes. Functional abnormalities of the brain has got a lot of cells, neurons, billions and millions of neurons, as we call it. And these neurons, they have a connection between each other. And the connection between two neurons, the space between new neurons is known as synapse. You might have learned it in your biology classes in younger days. This synapse has got a whole lot of chemicals, which are called neurotransmitters. And it is with the help of these chemicals called neurotransmitters that impulses are transmitted from one neuron to the other neuron in the form of electrical signals. So emotions, perceptions, memories, everything is transmitted in the form of electrical signals from one brain cell to another brain cell through the synapse with the help of these neurotransmitters. So any kind of abnormalities in the level of the neurotransmitters located in these synapses can present as behavioral problems. For example, there is a neurotransmitter called serotonin in the synapses. When the level of serotonin goes down, the commonest behavioral problem seen in human beings, depression, manifests. There is another neurotransmitter called dopamine in the synapse. When the level of dopamine goes up beyond a certain level, hearing of voices in the ear, delusional beliefs that somebody is trying to attack you, symptoms of psychosis come. So it was identified that mind is nothing but a constellation of the higher functions of the brain. And the seat of mind is nothing but the brain. Any structural damage to brain can lead to mental problems. Any derangements in the level of neurotransmitters or chemicals in between the nerve cells in the brain, that can also lead to behavioral problems. So the modern world, modern scientific world has identified that psychiatric disorders or mental disorders as we call it, they are essentially disorders of the brain. They are essentially disorders of the functioning of the brain. And most of the mental disorders are the result of chemical abnormalities of the level of the neurotransmitters in the brain. So that is regarding the relationship between brain and behavior. So many people ask us questions. What is meant by a mental illness? Mental illness can vary from culture to culture, from attitude to attitude, from place to place, from person to person. So what is this mental illness? Is there a uniform definition for a mental illness? So we all know that anger is an emotion. Every one of us may become angry at some point of time in life. Is anger a mental illness? If you ask that question, it's a difficult question to answer. But we can say, if a person becomes angry and as a result of his anger, he is just assaulting the person who is sitting near him to the extent that that person sustains severe head injury and dies, then can you call it as a normal behavior? Is it normal? Most of us would say that it is not very normal. A person may be feeling happy. It's okay to feel happy. But the moment he feels happy, he disrobes and streaks through the road, absolutely nude. Is it normal? Is it okay to do like that? Most of the people may say that it's not okay. All of us do feel sad at some point of time. But if a person who feels sad climbs on top of a 10-story building and jumps from there, attempting suicide, is it okay to behave like that? Most of us would say that it is not okay. So what is the boundary between a normal and an abnormal behavior? The World Health Organization has defined that a behavior or an emotion can be regarded as mental illness if it produces socio-occupational dysfunction. If the emotion or a behavior of a person grows to such an extent that his interpersonal relationships are affected, his ability to work and productively engage in life is affected, then you call it as mental illness. Another question which many people ask is, why does a person develop mental illness? What is the reason behind mental illness? There are various explanations which people give to why a person develops mental illness. Many people say that it is due to stress, due to unpleasant events in life, due to loss events in life, loss of a loved one, loss of job, financial crisis. We know that following this lockdown situation, following the COVID pandemic, people all over the world are suffering from unparalleled stress like never before in life. And many of them are developing mental illnesses. Many of them are contemplating and even attempting suicide. We know that. It's very common even in Kerala. So why does a person develop mental illness? Even though we say that stress is the reason for mental illness, one important thing which we have to keep in our mind is that everybody going through stress does not develop mental illness. For example, I can give you the example of two girls who have attempted a particular examination, and both of them have failed in that examination. The first girl obviously is disturbed, but within a couple of days, she is very disturbed for a couple of days, but after a couple of days, she comes out of her room, starts mingling with her parents, chats with her classmates, and within 3 or 4 days, she is back to her original self and is very back to her normal life. The second girl, once the result was announced, becomes disturbed like the first girl. She goes and locks herself in her room, doesn't come out, refuses to take food, refuses to take water, refuses to interact with people, refuses to even speak to her closest friends. And on the second day morning, she is seen hanging on the ceiling fan in her room. So both these girls suffered from the same stressor, failure in examination. But they have behaved in different ways. The first girl After distress for 2 or 3 days, overcame it. The second girl could never overcome it and she committed suicide. What is the reason for that? So the explanation for why a person develops mental illness is called two-hit hypothesis in English. TWOHIT HYPOTHESIS. So two-hit hypothesis is a metaphor. It is not a very literal usage. But definitely to understand that, I can use a little bit of a concrete analogy also. If you receive a severe blow on the side of your head, how would you feel? It would be definitely an unpleasant feel. You may feel dizzy for a moment, but most of us, after a couple of moments, would overcome it and start working again. What if after 1 minute, you receive a very severe blow at the same spot once again? A second blow. What would you feel? How would you feel? Most of us may collapse. So like that, two hits or two different kinds of reasons happening in the life of the same person can lead a person to mental illness. And what are these two different kinds of reasons? The first reason or the first hit is what is called biological predisposition to develop mental illness. What do you mean by biological predisposition? So certain people, at the time of their birth itself, they are predisposed to develop mental illness compared to others. I have already received a question in my chat box, and this question is specifically asking me, are mental illnesses hereditary? The question is by Dr. K. Surendran. So I am answering that question also along with that. So if a child is born at this moment at 6:30 p.m. on August 12th, Wednesday, a child is born. And in the neighboring house, another child is born at the same moment. Can we predict that this child born in this house is more likely or less likely to develop mental illness in future compared to the child born at the same time in the neighboring house? Is it possible? I would say that it's possible to a certain extent. How? The answer for that question is heredity or genetics, as you call it. Like every long-term illness, like every major illness, mental illness also has got a genetic component. But don't misunderstand me. It doesn't mean that any person having mental illness, all his children would be having mental illness. I am not saying like that. It's not like that, because every morning I receive some call from some relative or friend or a person who is known to me. The question would go like this: my daughter or my relative is getting married. The boy is a software engineer in Bangalore, very brilliant person with impeccable academic track record. But unfortunately, his mother had depression after he was born, postpartum depression, as you call it. It was completely cured following treatment, but we are a little worried on learning this. Is it possible that this boy may develop depression in future? Is it possible that his kids may develop depression in future? Would it be wise for us to go ahead with this proposal? That would be a common question. So here, the answer to this question is, there are 100 different mental illnesses listed by the World Health Organization. Mental illness is not a unitary entity. Learning disorder seen in children is a mental illness. Stage fright seen in adolescents is another mental illness. Depression seen in youngsters is a third mental illness. And psychosis seen in middle-aged people is another mental illness. And dementia, Alzheimer's disease, seen in elderly is a totally different mental illness. When you hear the term physical illness, what is the image that comes to your mind? Common cold is a physical illness. Within 7 days, it will be gone. Heart attack is a totally different physical illness. It may need prolonged treatment. And we know certain physical illnesses like AIDS, which may not be cured also. So these are all different physical illnesses. Like that, mental illnesses are also there, belonging to different grades. There are completely curable mental illnesses. For example, depression is a completely curable mental illness. Anxiety disorder is completely curable. Attention deficit hyperactivity in children, completely curable. There are some mental illnesses like diabetes, You know, physical illness, among physical illnesses, diabetes, we know, is a condition which may need prolonged treatment. Like that, among mental illnesses also, there are certain illnesses which may need prolonged treatment, like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Some prolonged treatment may be needed. And there are mental illnesses which cannot be cured also. For example, Alzheimer's disease. It cannot be completely cured. It can only be restricted, or some symptoms can be improved by treatment to a certain extent. So we should understand different mental illnesses have got different genetic basis. So when I say the term mental illness, most of you may be having the mental image of a mentally ill person or a mentally ill patient, as we call Bhrandan in Malayalam, the colloquial terminology which was used. So we have the image of a person who is improperly dressed and groomed with a very long beard, with poor self-care and hygiene, not in touch with reality, continuously muttering, showing some gestures in the air, not bothered about the world, blissfully ignorant of what is happening around him, immersed in his own private world, moving like that. So this is only one of the 100 different mental illnesses listed by the World Health Organization. And this condition is called schizophrenia. So let us examine how much heritable is schizophrenia? What is the genetic basis of schizophrenia? Imagine that I don't have a family history of schizophrenia. My parents don't have schizophrenia. None of my relatives also, to the best of my knowledge, have schizophrenia. If that is the reality, still I have got a 1% chance to develop schizophrenia, which means if you take a sample of 100 people without family history of schizophrenia, 1 out of those 100 persons may develop schizophrenia in future. But if one of my parents have got schizophrenia, my father or mother has got schizophrenia, then I have got a 10% chance to develop schizophrenia, which means you take a sample of 100 people with either mother or father having schizophrenia, 10 out of them may develop the illness in future. If both my parents have schizophrenia, both my dad and mom have schizophrenia, then I have got a 40% chance to develop schizophrenia. The positive thing is that even if 2 people with schizophrenia get married, if they have 10 children, only a minority, 4 out of those 10, 40%, would be developing the illness in future. But compared to the 1% possibility in a person without a family history, the 40% possibility is 40 times high. So why I am telling this to you? Why should I talk about this factor to a group of engineers? The reason behind this is that 1 year back, I had an engineering college student, a first-year engineering college student, who was brought to our hospital in an extremely violent state, extremely assaultive, abusive, irritable state. This gentleman, after his first-year engineering examination was completed, went out to have some fun with his friends. And his friends forced him to smoke cannabis. This gentleman smoked cannabis for the first time in his life. He just took a single puff of cannabis and he found that something is wrong with his environment. Everybody staring at him. Everybody making fun of him. He had a sudden feeling that the watchman standing in front of the college gate was in an intention to kill him. So he suddenly, violently moved forward, went near the watchman and started assaulting the watchman severely. So everybody went near him, caught hold of him, and after tying his hands and legs, brought him to a hospital. He was in an extremely violent state, in a totally psychotic state. We admitted him, we gave him injections, and following this injection, he recovered. So he was in our hospital for 1 week and we gave him medicines. So the reason for his behavioral problem is the sudden increase in a chemical in the brain called dopamine. So we gave medicines to reduce the level of dopamine and his symptoms improved completely. Within 1 week, he was totally symptom-free. After his symptoms were completely cured and we were about to discharge him, I was explaining to him why he developed this illness. I told him, Monen, you know why you developed this illness. You smoked cannabis and it was following that you developed it, isn't it? And he was giving me a wonderful answer. Sir, My friend Kuttappan, who is my close friend for the last 1 year, he has been smoking cannabis thrice a day for the last 1 year. Why he hasn't developed this illness? Why only me? Is there a cannabis in the world which produces mental illness in only me? What do you say? Wonderful question, very intelligent question. And the answer for that question is, Mr. Kuttappan, who is his friend, fortunately for him, does not have any family history of mental illness. So even if he has been smoking cannabis for 1 year, maybe it may not affect him. But if he continues to use it for a prolonged period of time, he will also develop mental illness. But unfortunately, this gentleman boy who was sitting in front of me, who was admitted as our patient, his mother is suffering from schizophrenia. His mother has been my patient. She's a central government employee, well settled in life right now. She has been on regular treatment for the last 10 years. The last time she had an illness was 10 years back. And after that, she has been taking treatment well. She is on a very low maintenance dose of a medicine. She's functioning well. She's going to office, doing all her work perfectly well, doing the household work perfectly well, absolutely asymptomatic. And this boy doesn't remember the last time his mother had a mental illness. It was probably when he was a small kid. But unfortunately, the genes which has been transmitted from his mother is in his body. So the chance to develop schizophrenia, the 10% chance to develop schizophrenia is very much there. So that is the reason why when he smoked a single puff of cannabis, the genetic possibility to develop that illness got manifest and the illness symptoms manifested. So the message of the story is very simple. If there is any family history of mental illness, it would be better to stay away from all substances of abuse, because textbooks say that cannabis unlit psychosis. It is just like Bodham is living in a utensil and you just open the lid of that by smoking cannabis and the illness becomes manifest. So just like this, lot of biological factors, heredity or genetics, any problems affecting the child during the pregnancy itself. That is why we say pregnancy is extremely important. The care during pregnancy is important. Any illness affecting the mother will affect the brain of the developing child, and such children can develop mental illness in future. Any problem during delivery, obstructed labor during delivery, the child does not cry soon after birth. It's possible that the child will develop mental illness in future. Any injury affecting the head of the child during childhood, that can also lead to mental illness. Uncontrolled epilepsy during childhood, that can lead to mental illness. And even thyroid hormone abnormalities, even that can lead to mental illness in future. So these are the biological factors or the biological predispositions to develop mental illness. Then we have got the second reason, and the second reason is stressful life events. So stressful life events, different events appear stressful to different people at different ages. For example, a 3-year-old boy, when he is sent to a nursery for the first time, his biggest stress would be separation from his mother. He'd be crying aloud and running after his mother when his mother is leaving him in the school. But the same boy, when he is 18 years of age, his biggest stress would be the sight of his mother. When he is trying to play PUBG game in his mobile, mother is intruding in and intruding into his privacy. That would make him stressed out. So like that, different stressors at different age. A study which was conducted a couple of decades back in the United States of America in people who are professionally well settled of the middle age, 40 to 60 years of age. It identified that the biggest stressor at that age was death of spouse. Majority of the people in the US reported that death of spouse was the biggest stressor which they could not tolerate at that stage. We conducted a similar study around 5 to 6 years back in Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, South Indian states. And the answer we got was totally different. Many people reported that death of spouse was the happiest moment in their life. It is possible. It's not something to be laughed at, because here in our part of the world, marriages continue, not because there is a true love between partners, but because of external factors. In Western world, if there is no true bonding between the partners, they part their ways and exit. So if a marriage is surviving, it is likely that there will be true attachment between partners. Here in our part of the world, we know that most of the marriages survive because I need a father for my kids. My parents need a husband for me, things like that. So even if there is no true attachment, marriage is continue. So an 18-year-old girl who eloped with a person of her choice, defying her parents, she is not educated, she is not employed, she does not have a job, no income. And after marriage, she discovers to her horror that the person she loved was an alcoholic, a drug addict, a womanizer, a wife beater. What option does she have in life other than to endure that marriage? So she has to suffer that marriage because there is no way out. Maybe 15 to 20 years later, this alcoholic husband dies in a road accident and she gets an insurance amount of 25 lakh rupees. It is possible that the lady may be overjoyed because all her problems are solved just like that. So the study which we conducted here identified that most of the people from our part of the world reported that death of their children when they are alive, that is the biggest stress. Many people reported that death of their child when they are alive, that is the unparalleled stress. It could be true because we in our part of the world invest a lot of time, emotions and money on our children, hoping that our children would take care of us when we are old, even though it's not a very realistic hope in the present era. So my message I'm trying to convey is that those people with a biological predisposition to develop mental illness may develop mental illness just by a small trigger. For example, a person with a family history of schizophrenia, just by smoking a single puff of cannabis, he develops mental illness. A person with a family history of depression, just because of a breakup of a love affair, he develops depression and he commits suicide. But a person without any family history, without any biological predispositions, he may be able to overcome even bigger stressors in life. So that is the two-hit hypothesis for you. So here, as we proceed in life, what should we do to make our mental health positive? What are the methods to remain happy in life? That would be the second part of my presentation, following which I would be gladly attempting to answer the questions which you are posing me. A lot of questions are already there in the chat box. But before going to those questions, I would just explain how to keep yourself positive during this period, indefinite period of lockdown and COVID. See, something which keeps us going is a word called hope, H-O-P-E. This is very important. Hope is something which keeps us going in life. And there was this famous psychologist called Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow mentioned something known as hierarchy of needs. He mentioned the needs which a human being is having in his life in the form of a pyramid. So at the lowest level of the pyramid, we have got basic needs like food, clothing, shelter, etc. Once those needs are satisfied, we want to get a gainful employment, money, financial stability. Next level, we want to be socially connected. We want to be recognized by the society. Next level, we want to become famous, maybe. We want people to be aware of us and things like that. And finally, towards the fag end of our life, we reach a situation called self-actualization. Self-actualization means a state in which you are coming to terms with the realities of your life. But actually, towards the end of his life, Abraham Maslow also changed his point of view. So there is this interesting anecdote about why and how Abraham Maslow changed his point of view. Abraham Maslow, one of the fathers of modern psychology, developed a hierarchy of needs in which he had identified self-actualization as the highest human experience. But towards the fag end of his life, he revised his earlier theory and acknowledged that this peak experience in life was not self-actualization, but something called self-transcendence, or living for a purpose higher than self. George Bernard Shaw, the famous actor, he explained it in a little bit different terms. Bernard Shaw explained, self-transcendence is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little cloud of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live it, is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It's a sort of splendid torch which I have got to hold up for the moment. I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to the future generations. Probably this idea is the essence of life, or something which makes you happy. Most of us, most of the people in this world at this moment are worried about their life, how my life is going to be, how my life is going to proceed in future, how my future is going to be, how my business is going to fare in future, how my income is going to be affected by the indefinite period which we are going through right now. The problem is that after a certain stage in life, these thought processes vanish from your mind, especially when you have reached a stage where you are 60 plus or towards the late stage of life. When you look back, it's not the amount of money you made, the extent of fame you have, the extent of recognition you got from this society. All these things do matter at a certain stage when you are young. But much more than that, when you are about to exit from this world, what matters the most is how much you have contributed to this world. To view it from a different point of view, it is better to start thinking about what the philosophy of your life is, what the purpose of your life is from a very young age itself. Unfortunately, we don't discuss this point to our adolescents right now. We instill a fierce sense of competitiveness in our adolescents, as a result of which they start comparing themselves with others based on their academic accomplishments, based on the superficial external attributes, based on the material achievements in life, based on the amount of money they make. If you ask a 17-year-old boy, what is the purpose of your life? Most of them may answer that, I want to get into the course of my choice, the college of my choice. After that, I want to get a job. I want to go abroad. I want to make a lot of money. I want to buy the choicest of vehicles available. I want to buy a huge house. Then I would start traveling to the vacation destinations of my choice. I would tick my bucket list one by one and visit almost all places and enjoy life to the fullest. What after that? What after that in life? Absolutely no answer. So this is what you call the philosophical vacuum of your life. Unfortunately, a large number of youngsters in the present world suffer from this philosophical vacuum. When you suffer from a philosophical vacuum, the problem is when you suffer from a setback, you are absolutely dejected, devastated, and crestfallen because you don't have any anchor to hold on to. You think that making money, enjoying life is the best thing. When you suffer from a financial stress, you feel that your life has been defeated. The purpose of your life has been defeated. So this philosophical vacuum can lead to three unhealthy things in life. Number one is depression and self-annihilation. When you become extremely depressed, you want to eradicate yourself from this world. You want to commit suicide. Number two, addictions. There are two kinds of addictions: drug addiction, alcohol addiction, substance addiction, as you call it, and behavioral addiction. That is another kind of addiction. Behavioral addiction means you do a particular act, you enjoy it. To get the same degree of pleasure, you engage in that activity over and over again for a long period of time. And finally, that act becomes the only thing which gives you pleasure. For example, watching the mobile, surfing pornography in net, playing games in net, social media. or even sex, or even food, shopping. All these are behavioral addictions. So the second way to bridge the philosophical vacuum is addictions. And the third is aggression. You turn towards the world around you, you criticize, you blame others, you think that your life has been spoiled because of the attitude of others towards you. You blame your parents for ruining your childhood. You blame your teachers for spoiling your adolescence. You blame your spouse for taking away the glitz and glamour of your youth. You blame your employer for making your life hell. You'll be showing this aggression towards anyone and everyone in your vicinity. So these are the three unhealthy ways in which you try to bridge the philosophical vacuum of life: addiction, depression, and aggression. But if you ask this question to adolescents, what is the purpose of your life? What is the philosophy of your life? There are different ways in which you can view it. It's not a very, what you call, spiritual kind of a question. I can say that it's a very materialistic kind of question. What do you want yourself to be remembered for after you have exit from this world? That's a way of reframing this question. If a person says that I want myself to be remembered by the next generation as a person who tried to be of maximum benefit to maximum number of human beings during my existence in my earth, your philosophy is very clear. And once this philosophy is clear, the pathways to attain that philosophy is what you call the values of your life. So if you set your philosophy as being of use to maximum number of human beings, you would set your pathway of life such that you won't be consciously irritating or harming another person. Even if you don't try to help a person every moment, you would refrain from harming others at least. And that sets the way, and that sets the pathway to your philosophy. So that is of extreme importance in life. And again, to remain mentally healthy, having this philosophy of life is important. Number two is, I am sure the last week's speaker might have spoken in detail about health, brain, and mind. How physical health is very much related to mind. That is another very important aspect. You need to sleep comfortably if your mind has to be healthy. Many people suffer from sleep problems. So you have to practice something called sleep hygiene, which will help you to get good sleep at night. Refrain from using mobile phone and digital devices for at least 2 hours before your proposed time of sleep. I'm sure the quality of your sleep would improve. Exercise for 45 minutes in the evening with exposure to sunlight and take a bath using cold water. Your sleep quality would improve. If you practice some relaxation exercise just before going to sleep, quality of your sleep would improve. And 3 things which I always tell people to improve your mental state. Simple things you can do just before you go to bed. Number 1 is a simple exercise called 3 blessings. Most of us complain that we are deprived of our due. Our due, we mean the financial successes, recognitions, accomplishments, power, so many things. But we are conveniently forgetting certain small, great things in our life, which we have been blessed with, which we are consciously not aware of. For example, our ability to see with our eyes, our ability to breathe smoothly, our ability to speak, our ability to hear, our ability to walk and move around comfortably. Unless we lose these functions, we won't recognize how much of a blessing each of these are. So the first thing among these 3 things which I would like to tell you before you go to bed is 3 blessings. Every night before you go to bed, note down, write down, record in a diary 3 happy things which happened on that day. It can be small things like having a tasty food, listening to a nostalgic song, receiving a call from an old friend after ages, listening to a joke in television. Or even if you don't have any such good things happening every day, you can focus on the blessings you have got. You can see with your eyes, you can hear with your ears, you can speak, you can breathe. Any of these. Write down these 3 things, any 3 happy things in your life. Read it and say to yourself that my life is good. It's not bad. It's not ruined. It's still positive. And go to bed. The next thing, the second thing you can do is something called childhood visit. What is the purest phase of life? Most innocent phase of life? I'm sure most of you would agree with me that it's our childhood. So when you go to bed, lie down, switch off your light, close your eyes, and remember any pleasant, happy event which happened in your life before 10 years of age. I'm specifying 10 years of age because most of the events which happened after 10 years would be powerfully emotionally charged events. And it's not good to remember too much of emotionally charged events. So you can remember the childhood event which happened before 10 years of age. A happy event, a nostalgic event related to your parents, your siblings, your classmates, your school experiences, something related to your neighbors, anything. So go back in time to that time, freeze in time, go back to those emotions, experience those emotions as such, visualize those events, and gradually remembering that event, go to sleep. I'm telling this because the last thing you do when you go to bed is going to be the first thing to influence you when you wake up in the morning. If you fight with your spouse very badly, abuse, physically fight, the problem which happens is that you go to sleep in an irritable mood. Your brain is irritable. So even after you get up in the morning, you are continuing to be in an irritable mood. You want to settle that irritability with someone in your vicinity. You may shout at your kids. You may scold your servant. You may go to your office and raise your voice at your co-workers. And that ruins your goodwill for sure. So instead of that, do a childhood, go to sleep, wake up in the morning with a moral purity associated with your mind and do things very energetically. And the third thing to be done is something called gratitude visit. Gratitude is a very important thing in life. So when I go for conducting corporate training sessions, at many places, I'm introduced to people who are introduced in public fora as self-made man. Mr. X is a self-made man. What is the meaning of that terminology? It simply means that his parents haven't made much money for him, but he toiled hard, he built an empire, made a lot of money, became a huge businessman, successful person. And that is what you mean by a self-made. But this terminology is amusing me to no extent because behind the success of every self-made man, there is the selfless service offered by hundreds of human beings. Isn't it true? Just look back at your own life. Just remember the large number of people who have been of help to you without expecting anything in return. It could be a classmate of yours who encouraged a talent in you. It could be a teacher in your small classes who identified a positive quality in you and appreciated it. It could be a neighbor who helped you in some way or the other. It could be a friend in your college who encouraged you to participate in certain competitions and express yourself. It could be a person known to you who helped you financially at a particular point of time. So human beings tend to forget these things. That's the biggest tragedy in life. It is understandable also to a certain extent that people tend to forget these things because we don't want to remember that we have been at the mercy of another person. But remember, every human being is a helpless being. We need help from somebody at some point of time in life. So just looking back at our life, realizing the importance of people who have helped us, and developing an attitude of gratitude. At least once in a week, Saturday evening or Sunday, just reminisce your past life. Just think about one person who has helped you in a selfless manner. If that person is alive, just call him and give a word of gratitude. If he is very distant from you, using social media, connect with him and send a message to him expressing your gratitude. Even if he is no more, it's okay. You can take your diary and write a letter expressing your gratitude to that person who is no more in this world. That will also purify you morally because you become level-headed. One of the biggest problems, biggest reasons for stress is that we take ourselves too seriously. We think that you are too important in this world. But understand, human being is a totally insignificant entity in this huge universe. And the universe is proving it to us in different ways. And COVID is only one way of proving to us that human being, despite his intellect and capacities, is an insignificant entity who can be washed away in a moment. That's something which we have to be aware about. And from that point, we should start developing goodwill, connect with people. So let me wind up my session by just mentioning a very interesting study which was conducted in Harvard. It started in 1938. It is known as the Harvard Human Development Study or the Grand Study. It was conducted in students who enrolled in Harvard right from 1938, still continuing 82 years. More than 30,000 people have participated in that study. Every person who gets enrolled in that study is evaluated for his childhood experiences, relationship with parents, with peers, with siblings, school experiences, college life, what has happened in college. After they have finished college also, they are followed up to understand how they proceed in life. At what age they get a job, what income they make, at what age they develop illness, and at what age they die. So this Harvard study has put forward 5 important factors which prolong the longevity of a human being, which prolong the lifespan of a human being. Number 1, proper exercise. Number 2, regulated diet. Number 3, abstaining from alcohol. Number 4, doing away with all kinds of tobacco products, both smoke and chewing products. We know all these things, isn't it? Do we need a Harvard study to teach us all these 4 things? Most of you may be thinking. But there is a 5th factor which prolongs our life much more than these 4 factors. And this 5th factor, the most important factor which enhances our lifespan, is the quality of human relationships which you develop during your childhood and adolescence. So this is the factor which prolongs your life more than anything else. That is the most important information which we have got from Harvard. So if we connect with human beings, if we have a positive regard for them, if they have a goodwill towards you, it is possible that you may have people around you at unearthly hours to open your mind to. So that makes you positive. That eradicates negativity from your mind. That takes away the negative thoughts from your mind. Most of the people develop negative thoughts in mind when they are alone, when they are idle. So that can happen to the most accomplished people in the world also. I have read that Rahul Dev Burman, or R.D. Burman as he is called, one of the finest music composers ever in India, one of the busiest composers during his heyday. He has composed music for 283 films, more than 2,000 songs he had composed. He's a very busy composer. But towards the last stage of his career, when a new generation of composers came up, Rahul Dev Burman was neglected. He was out of work. And he was a person who loved to talk to people. He was a person who loved the company of people. He used to enjoy the company of his musicians and singers and lyricists and filmmakers when he was very active at work. But once he didn't have any work, there was a huge vacuum. It is said that R.D. Burman used to call his friends, invite them over to his place, luring them by offering food and alcohol to have company, just to have somebody to talk to. So that is the fate of probably one of the most successful artists ever produced in Indian soil. So such solitude is possible for every person. So let me finish by mentioning the difference between 2 terms in English, loneliness and aloneness. What is the difference between loneliness and aloneness? I would say that loneliness is aloneness misunderstood. In loneliness, actually, the society is distancing it from you. Others are ignoring you. Others think that you are not significant. They are distancing from you. They are running away from you. But in aloneness, you are moving away from others. Often what we do is we become alone. We distance ourselves from others. We don't communicate to others. We don't connect with others. And finally, one morning, we complain that we are lonely. In fact, it is not loneliness. It is aloneness. So connecting with people, one of the short methods to remain positive and happy is to connect with your schoolmates and college mates at least once in 3 months. Have a get-together, if not a real get-together, a virtual get-together at least. Now the social media gives a lot of platforms for virtual get-together. So have a virtual get-together of old college mates and schoolmates at least once in 3 months. What is the advantage of that? Because that is the age or stage in life where you are devoid of any crowns and power. You are not called as sir by anybody. You are addressed by nicknames probably at that point of time. So when you meet again after so many years, you may be occupying high offices in life. When you meet your schoolmates and college mates, they are unlikely to address you as sir. They are unlikely to recognize your true power and position. Right? They may address you by the nickname which they addressed you 30 years or 40 years back. It's a wonderful experience because that levels you down. That energizes you. That makes you young. That makes you understand the reality that you are devoid of all the frills and power and authority you command right now. It's just an ordinary human being who loves to connect with others, who should connect with others definitely for his survival. Because the most essential aspect of human survival is socialization, connecting with others. So I think it's 1 hour since I have started, more than 1 hour I think since I have started giving my lecture. So thank you very much each and every one of you for your very patient listening, and my sincere gratitude to the organizers of this program for giving me this great opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arun sir. That was really great and so many tips for each one of us to take up. Though we have short of time, I'll just take many questions are there, but I'll just take 1 or 2 of those. One of the main questions, there is 2 questions I'm connecting it. How do you distinguish schizophrenia and depression? Does a person with schizophrenia suffer from depression and vice versa?
Okay, I shall answer it very briefly. Schizophrenia is a condition in which the person does not have any insight about his illness. He may be showing some fears, suspicions. He may be hearing abnormal voices in his ear. As a response to that, he may be muttering to self. But he does not recognize that he has got an illness. Everybody else in his vicinity understands that he has got an illness, but he doesn't recognize that. That is schizophrenia. Depression is a condition in which we know that there is a problem with us, but we are helpless. So there are 9 clear symptoms of depression. Continuous sadness, reduced interest in previously pleasurable activities, unexplained tiredness, sleep disturbance, appetite disturbance, concentration disturbance, slowness of thoughts and actions, a feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness, and suicidal ideas. If 5 of them are present continuously for 2 weeks, that is depression. It is possible that schizophrenia person can develop depression, but there is a condition called post-schizophrenic depression. Once the schizophrenia is treated and the symptoms are controlled, then probably the relatives and near and dear ones would be telling the person, you know the way in which you behaved when you were ill. You're abusing your dad. You're hitting your mom. And on hearing all these things, probably this poor soul didn't have an insight when he did those things. But once his illness is cured, when he regains an insight, he realizes what his behavior was. Then to his horror, he realizes what kind of an illness he had. And then he may slip into depression. And those people with schizophrenia, with depression also, if the depression is not treated, as I have already mentioned, depression is a completely curable illness. But if you don't treat depression at the right time, in a small percentage of them, they may develop symptoms of schizophrenia like delusions and hallucinations in future. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One more question is, what causes Alzheimer's disease in our brain? Can be cured?
Yeah, Alzheimer's cannot be completely cured, but if you detect it at the earliest stage itself, by treatment, you can prolong the lifespan to 15 to 20 years. And that is good enough because in most people, Alzheimer's surfaces after 65 years. So 20 years means 85 years. That is good enough for a person. So the reasons for Alzheimer's, whatever has been identified is physical inactivity and inactivity of the brain. If you don't exercise your brain by thinking, reading, working, etc., you are more likely to develop Alzheimer's. And if you don't have physical activity also. Smoking, alcohol, all those things can also predispose to Alzheimer's. And most importantly, if there is a family history of Alzheimer's, you are at risk.
That's great, sir. There's one more last question I'll just take. How do you explain hallucinations and ESP?
Yeah. Hallucination is perception without a stimulus, we can say. That is, you are hearing a voice when actually there is nothing around. The reason for this hallucination and these extrasensory perceptions also are a kind of hallucination. That is resulting from a derangement of a chemical called dopamine in the brain. There is a part of the brain called the mesolimbic dopamine circuit. It extends from a part of the brain called ventral tegmental area to nucleus accumbens. When the level of dopamine goes up in that area, it leads to this kind of experiences. Thank you.
Well, one more request has come to ask on that. Just a minute, sir.
Yeah.
How where is it? Yeah, 1 minute. Yeah, can you explain the stress that women experience during the menopausal stage?
Yeah, wonderful question. Wonderful question. It's a very important one. Yeah, the reasons behind that is that there is a sudden change in the hormonal levels in the body. So as a result of that, women experience from certain physical symptoms. There is a burning sensation all over the body. They sweat even if the AC has been put on in full swing. There is fatigue, tiredness, aches and pains. That is what is known as postmenopausal vasomotor syndrome. The reason behind that, the biological basis behind that is there is a chemical called norepinephrine in the brain. The level of norepinephrine goes down in the brain due to these hormonal changes. And that will lead to sadness along with some physical incapacitation also. So we have got some excellent medicines to tackle it right now. There are certain medicines which improve the level of norepinephrine in the brain, like desvenlafaxine. It improves these vasomotor symptoms wonderfully well. It takes away the depression and stress also very well.
Thank you so much, sir. There are too many questions. I believe we can answer. We'll share it with you and then you can get back to us because of shortage of time. I'll pass it on to Mr. Arjun for the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think there is one vital question. If I am permitted 2 more minutes, I would ask that. I just see it in front of my screen.
Yeah,
if I am allowed just 2 minutes.
Please.
Yeah.
Just 2 minutes. There's one very important question regarding spirituality. If mind is the brain, how does behavioral change through the act of love, counseling, spirituality, etc., that do not touch the brain? So that is the fundamental thing. Every behavior touches the brain. Every act of kindness touches the brain. Even meditation impacts the brain. So people have this notion that spirituality, care, affection, etc. doesn't affect the brain. It definitely affects the brain. For example, there is something called neurobiology of spirituality. There are essays and books on that subject. So when you meditate, what happens is that there is something known as insula in the brain, which becomes stimulated. As a result, you are capable of focusing on the present moment. And there is another part of the brain called cortical midline structures, which lead to exaggerated responses. That area becomes pacified. So you can distance yourself from your past experiences and troublesome problems in life. So all these acts of affection, love, everything touches the brain. It is through the brain itself that they produce an impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. That was great. Arjun, sir, for the vote of thanks, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi, everyone. This is Arjun from ISOC Trivandrum. I'm currently the treasurer of ISOC. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Arun B Nair for a wonderful session regarding brain and behavior. He have shared, many insights regarding with sharing the example with various situations which we face in our daily life. I thank in the name of all organizers and the participants. Thank you so much, Dr. Arun B Nair, for the full session with us, and thank you for answering all the questions. Even if we are running out of time, but where you take the important question, everyone need to know. It's really great from your part. I thank you very much, Dr. Arun B Nair. I take this opportunity to thank all organizers who are working closely for this class. IEEE Kerala session, the Institution of Engineers Kerala State Chapter, Internet Society Trivandrum Chapter, Computer Society of India Trivandrum Chapter, Project Management Institute Kerala Chapter, Vakkom Moulavi Foundation Trust Trivandrum, IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society Kerala Chapter. And I would like to thank all participants who are in this meeting and sharing their questions to Dr. Arun B Nair as well. I especially thank I take this opportunity to thank Harindra Lal sir for the wonderful opportunity which is shared. Thank you everyone for joining this session.
Thank you all. And I wish to confirm that the next week we'll have our next session on petrochemical by a petrochemical consultant, Dr. Zahir Bashir, on global warming. Is it real? And if so, are we to blame? So looking forward to connecting with you all tomorrow, next Wednesday. Thank you.